And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Lynskey here, your ambassador for Alumni Affairs with Season 5, Episode 13, Lucky 13 of Looking Back with Lynskey. Very special guest today, the pride and joy of the Columbus Math Department, class of 1988, legendary class, 32 years in the classroom, grinding it out with the best and the brightest. Very involved with the Marist charism here at Columbus, and I will tell you, as a student, he had the greatest mullet in the entire school. So it is my pleasure to introduce the one and only Wency Ortega. Wentz, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a long time coming, bro.
It has been.
But good things come to those who wait.
Absolutely.
So here we are, Lucky 13.
That's exactly the number I was hoping to get to.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
So, Wentz, as you know, we always start with, how did you get to Columbus? Because everybody's journey is different.
It is.
So what led you to become a Columbus explorer?
Well, as a student, when
Yes.
I first came here, I went to St. Brendan, right next door, St. Brendan Elementary. And growing up, all I would do is look out the window.
Yeah.
I'd see all the shenanigans going on in the parking lot, only good stuff. But everything was going on there, and I just always thought I'd like to be a part of that. Having said that, my mom taught at St. Brendan High, and she wanted me to go initially, and I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this, but she wanted me to go to Belen. So I told her flat out, I'm not going to go to Belen.
You made a stand.
I made a stand. One of the few I did when I was young. Later on, I got a little bit more, strength behind me. But at the time, I go, I'm not going to go to Belen. Do not send me to Belen. At the time, I was willing to go to St. Brendan. She was there. I'm like,
I understand that.
But I told her, I've always wanted to go to Columbus. I mean, I knew friends of my sisters wound up going there, and my cousins. I had a couple of cousins that came through here. So I'm like, this is where I want to be. So she gave in. She allowed me to come, and I was more than happy to make my way to Columbus. So that's as a student. Yeah.
So yes, you mentioned shenanigans earlier.
Yeah.
The kids at Little St. Brendan sometimes see things that are, unsound, we could say, and particularly back then. So you came in as a student my first year as a teacher.
Yeah.
It was a different place.
Completely different place.
How long did it take you to feel at home at Columbus?
I would say probably about a year and a half.
Okay.
Mostly because I'm one of those people I knew people, but I never really had like my group.
Gotcha.
So a year and a half to 2 years is probably when I went on my sophomore retreat that I still really started feeling comfortable. I mean, I played freshman basketball, but I was way down near the end of the bench. So you could say my playing time was limited to blowouts or when we were being blown out. I played as a sophomore as well, similar situation. But I'll have to say that when I was playing as a sophomore for Butch Diano, he always had me like right next to him. He had me doing the statistics and stuff like that.
Okay.
Kind of, I guess, a little precursor to what was going to happen in my life later on. So I would take all the stats, points, assists, and all that. And every once in a while, I would just be in Butch's ear. Hey, you think we should be doing that? Of course, Butch would look at me like, who do you think you are? But he would tell me, from time to time, he's like, you knew your stuff. So I started feeling comfortable. I had a voice there. Even if it was a minimal voice, I felt like at least he was listening to me. And I go, hey, this is pretty cool. One of my coaches is maybe not actually doing anything I tell him, but he's actually listening and making me feel important. And then from that point on, I think I kind of found my feet here and started growing.
We all have that one person when we were students here. And that's a perfect example. I mean, Butch Diano, he's not a Marist brother, but he's as Marist as you can get.
Absolutely.
And he would not remember that in a million years, but you'll never forget it.
Right. Well, he does tell me from time to time, he goes, I remember how you knew basketball.
Yeah.
You had an idea of what was going on out there. It wasn't just a bunch of people just running around. So he would tell me that from time to time. Now, that he knew that I felt that way. No, and I don't think I've ever actually told him that, even though we still talk from time to time.
And now he'll
So,
know.
Butch, if you're listening, now you know.
Yeah, and those are the important things. You mentioned something, sophomore retreat, game changer for you.
It was.
Talk about, if you would, Wentz, and this will segue into later, how important campus ministry became in your life as a student.
Well, after I went on my sophomore retreat, not only did I start attending, back then we had campus ministry. It was like, we had the freshman group, the sophomore group, the junior group. Now it's more like a big blanket, but back then we had the individual ones. So I started attending that a little bit, but I also started getting more involved in my own parish after that.
Okay.
So it became not just a Columbus thing for me. What I learned here is something that I was able to bring back to my parish. So I started attending my youth group in St. Brendan. I dragged my brother along, the two of us started going, and that became a big part of my life. So I would do the youth groups on Tuesdays, and then here I would, as much as possible, I'd hound Brother Brady, hey, can you, when's there another retreat coming up? Yeah, I would like to do the retreats, so I would do the confirmation retreats. I did my junior encounter. I do just little retreats. I do the freshman kerygma. Back then it was called the Emmaus, the sophomore Emmaus. I would help out in those retreats.
Yeah.
And it always kept me engaged, especially after I gave up basketball when I realized that it was going nowhere. I needed to find a place.
Okay.
And that was my thing. So I would do the, participate in the sophomore group then, and then the junior group, eventually obviously senior group. But I would work with the retreats and the encounters, and if there was like a little leadership workshop, I would do that. They asked me to be a Eucharistic minister, so that was a big thing for me. Becoming a Eucharistic minister, I found the value in the sacraments in a way I didn't before. So eventually my parish, I found it to be so, inspirational and something that really I felt inside, like it brought like a burning inside me, like this is what I want to do. I went back to my parish, I became a Eucharistic minister in my parish, and I continued doing that for years. So the things I learned here, I was able to take and use them as I grew up. And it was kind of like a springboard to all the different steps I took in my life. I can actually literally go back to and say that this started at Columbus.
Yeah. You can trace it. And how important was Brother Brady in your life?
Well, I'll tell you, Brother Brady, as far as, I look at all the campus ministers over the years, and nothing against the ones we have now. Jerry's great, and his whole team is wonderful. Brother Ken was an incredible human being, and Father Hilly. These are all people that I was able to work with. But Brady was really the one that I think really pushed me to become a leader, to become a better person. And to this day, I look at him and I have so many great memories. One of the things that we did when I graduated, we felt like there was no follow-up for, you graduate, where do you go from here? So you have to kind of find your place. And myself and a couple other Columbus alumni, Jose Mas was one of them, Paulo Stopignan, a couple other guys. When I was like sophomore, junior year in college, we came and we approached Brother Brady and we go, listen, would you be willing to allow us to come in and have like a group for college students? Because we really need to find something to continue this and to share it. And he was open enough to say, yes, I'll do that. And he would come here and he would open up the chapel for us and he would sit with us and do that for, some alumni that just wanted to get together and keep doing this. And we opened it up so you didn't have to come to Columbus. So we had some St. Brendan High and Lourdes girls, graduates as well, that would come in. And we did that for a couple of years, and he was always so gracious, and he would come. And if we needed help, he would provide us with the help. And this is on top of everything he would do here. If you remember back then, Brother Mike had his hands on everything dealing with campus ministry.
The arm wrestling tournament,
Everything.
the Brady Bunch, everything.
And back then, he was the campus minister. It's
Yes.
not like now we have a team.
Yes, he was it.
He was it, so.
What's so interesting about what you just talked, it juxtaposed what this school was like. Yeah, the 80s, pretty wild time here.
A little crazy.
But at the same time, there was a foundation of faith at this school that balanced
Absolutely.
things out, you know. And for the record, go to the 88 yearbook, one of the greatest mullets ever. And mullets, it was a competition
It was
back
a competition.
then.
There were some good mullets. There were.
You know,
And I just had a haircut before that because my mom refused to let me show up with the full mullet. So you won't appreciate the glory of that mullet completely if you see the picture. But it was still rather good.
you and Foyo, it was a death match with who had
Yeah.
the better mullet, you know?
Foyo had a good one.
And of Coach Massaro
Tony Massaro.
might have won the whole thing.
He did. He had
And
a
now
great
look
mullet.
at us. I had the 70s flowing locks, you know, the Jim Morrison look.
Yeah.
You had the 80s Joe Dirt, and now we got nothing.
Joe Dirt. It's funny you say that because it turns out that the mullet, the word mullet, wasn't used back in our day. We didn't have a name for it.
No.
It actually came up because of Joe Dirt. The Beastie Boys did a song about, it was Joe Dirt somewhere around that time, and they called him Mullet Head, and it was from there that there you go, a little trivia
There's
for
a
you.
fun fact right there.
So-
There's a did you know right there.
Did you know?
So, in terms of your teaching career, again, everybody got here as a teacher in a different way. I knew what I wanted to do from the early. I wanted to be a history teacher, period.
Right.
How did you end up? What path did you follow to become a math teacher at Columbus High School?
So I had no intentions of being a teacher when I graduated from here.
There you go.
I was going to be an engineer. My father's
right.
a land surveyor, and he studied engineering. My mom had a degree in physics and mathematics. So I was going to go and I was going to apply these things. And I was like, perfect, I'm going to be an engineer. So I did 2 years of engineering, bored out of my mind. I just did not enjoy it at all.
Can I ask you a question
Yeah.
once, not to interrupt? Did you always have a love for numbers and math?
Absolutely.
It was just one of those things.
Yes, to the point where my parents knew, and I would do things that were just a little bit odd,
Okay.
mathematically inclined.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
I'll be honest. When I was a kid, I had a collection of baseball cards, and I would study them vigorously. So I used to be a huge baseball buff. I still am, but before
So you were a stats kid.
I knew, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I can give you anything, and I would create baseball players. I would create them out of if I merged these two guys
Gotcha,
platooning,
gotcha.
and so I could tell you. You tell me, oh, give me these numbers. I go, not only that, but these two guys platooning. This is the numbers, and these numbers just came and flowed
So
out of me.
it's
So-
a natural gift.
Yeah,
But you weren't going to be a teacher with
I
those
was not.
natural gifts. So engineering, not so much.
no. So after 2 years, I decided to change my major, and I decided I wanted to do just pure math. And I wanted to do everything from a mathematical standpoint. I could still work with an engineering firm or some other, place that they needed me to crunch numbers, because I would love doing that, I figured. So UM didn't have a degree in mathematics, though.
Really?
They didn't. They had a department, but they didn't have. You couldn't get a degree in math, and they wanted me to start taking some classes over because I was doing so many engineering courses that they're like, yeah, well, these won't go towards any degree we will give you, so we'll have to extend your time here. And I'm like, you know what? I want to finish in 4 years. So I wound up transferring to FIU, where they did have a department, or I guess you could say a school of mathematics. And I wound up getting my degree in a bachelor's of science in mathematics. So what happened? I was working next door in St. Brendan in the rectory.
Doing what?
I was in the rectory. They had me as a honeydew.
Gotcha.
Honeydew this, honeydew that,
Yeah.
you know. I was working with the altar servers there as well, and the Eucharistic ministers.
Okay.
And I would do my daily job. If they needed me, they put me to work in the front desk. If they needed me to do something in the back, I would, do the accounting and do the deposits in the bank, whatever they need me to do. So again, I'm right next door. And I would see the parking
There
lot,
you
and I would
are.
just look across the parking lot. So I get my degree, and over the summer, I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do with this? And just one day, I was walking into the building, and I looked across the parking lot, I go, yeah, you know what? I think I'm just going to walk over there and see if there's anything available. I'll do it for a year, and if I like it, I'll do it a little longer, and if I don't, then I'll find something else. So I walked into the office, and I said, I'm thinking of applying. They're like, well, get an application. So I'm getting an application, and I ran to Kevin, Brother Kevin, and I told him what I was thinking. He was like, well, come into my office. So I walked into his office, and he goes, so you have a degree? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, you're going to have to show us a diploma. And I go, well, they gave me one of these little diplomas that they put in your wallet, And I go, here, I have it here. It's laminated and everything. You want to see it? So he looked at it and was like, okay, so you have your degree. What do you feel comfortable teaching? I go, well, anything math related. And he goes, well, it just so happens at the time, former teacher here, Dagoberto Gonzalez,
Sure.
he had passed away
Yes. God
during the
bless him.
previous year.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I knew him from St. Brendan because he was the organist next door.
Wow.
And while I was doing my coursework in FIU, I needed to take a course, and he happened to have the book, so he lent me the book. So I have it with his name on it.
Wow.
I took the course. He passed away. I had the book.
Yeah.
And when I went in, Brother Kevin mentions, well, we had someone
Yeah.
passed away. A permanent sub took over his position. We need someone to take over
Yeah.
that permanent sub's position. That permanent sub at the time was none other than Mr. Juan Gomez, the Iceman. So the Iceman moves into the math department.
Yeah.
They bring me in as a permanent sub, but they need 2 courses to be taught. So he goes, look, I can have you teaching these 2 algebra courses, and we'll see how you do.
Man,
So
that's a perfect setup.
perfect setup, part-time, so it's low stress. Look to see if I know what I'm doing, see if I'm comfortable doing it. So I did it for a year, and at the end of the year, Kevin was principal at the time,
Yeah.
and he would go to principals meetings from time to time, and he would tell me, hey, I'm not going to be here this day. Would you be able to sub my class? And he goes, in fact, I'll just give you the material. Can you just teach it that day?
Perfect.
So I would teach it, and he'd come back, and he'd realize he didn't need to reteach it. So at the end of the year, he told me, look, I can't tell you how you did in your classroom, but I know from what I saw when I would get back, and the kids would know everything that's going on, and I could just move on. He goes, I think not only can you teach this, but, he moved on that year. That was a year that they moved him up to I believe it was in Marist, Bayonne.
Yeah, he went to Bayonne. Yes.
When he went to Bayonne, he goes, look, somebody needs to teach the class I was teaching. I would like you to teach that class. And that's when I got into doing the advanced algebra. And then I go, all right, I'll do it one more year. Let's see what happens. I'll do it full time and see what happens. 31 more years of that, and here I am.
How long did it take? Well, first off, how perfectly did all those pieces have to line up for this to happen?
People say, whoever says there isn't a God, I'm like, things could not have fallen so perfectly. The truth of the matter is that this universe relies on chaos. There's chaos everywhere. Just the fact, the way it works, there is, perfection within chaos. But the way certain things just fall into place, there has to be something greater going on there. And I firmly believe God put me in that place. I mean, that one day, if Kevin wouldn't have been in that office that day, I might not be here,
It's amazing how those little encounters change the trajectory of, your entire life.
Absolutely.
Same thing happened to me. I mean, it is amazing. How long did it take you because again, the 90s were not a picnic here.
They were not.
How long did it take you to feel comfortable with what you were doing and feel that you had earned the trust, confidence, respect, whatever of your students? Because as well as I do, they figure out real quick if you can teach or not.
Yeah. I would say it was 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
I felt pretty good. Year 1, I only taught 2 classes.
Yeah.
I felt pretty good. Year two, I still felt pretty good. Year three, I questioned everything.
What
my
happened?
entire existence.
What happened in year 3?
Year 3, I had one class. It was just one class in particular that was just beyond challenging, and I couldn't figure out how to get through to them.
Was this
properly discipline them?
Algebra or what?
It was a geometry class.
Oh,
Now I taught geometry the year before.
Yeah,
but this year, yes.
Yeah.
So
Sophomores?
And it's one of those things that, you go back through time, you remember names, you remember faces.
Yeah.
Everything blurs together. Yeah, not that one period. I
Yeah.
can name you off the top of my head 6 guys that 30 years ago made my life miserable. And it's not like if I think of them in a negative way or things like that. I've run into them. And you have that conversation with them, like, you made my life miserable. They're like, yeah, sir, I know, I'm sorry, But they were a challenge. And it was to the point where I was losing my mind. I was losing my cool in class.
Yeah,
And I get to a point where you're like, I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah.
You don't want to send every kid down because then they
That's
start
a red
thinking.
flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wasn't doing that, but at the end of that year, I had a meeting with the administration, and it just so happens Pat Call had to take over for a class, and she was next door. So she heard what was going on in there.
Yeah.
And they came to me and they said, listen, you're having trouble. And I go, yeah, I'm having trouble with this class. I am. I go, it's that one class.
Yeah.
If you were next to me any other classes, you wouldn't see this happening. But you know what? I understood where they were coming from because I really felt that. The next year, year 4, all of a sudden, I didn't have those issues anymore. I was talking to Juan Gomez, and Juan Gomez wound up with the exact 6 kids that I had. And Juan started questioning what his abilities were and if he was able to do it.
It's amazing what a few can do, isn't it?
Yeah. And from that day on, I've never had really discipline issues in my class. It's almost like through fire, I thought I wasn't learning anything. And the next year, apparently I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Because I never had the discipline issues
Yeah.
ever again in my class.
Through the fire.
Yeah.
Did you teach sophomores next year?
Yes, I did.
You know the best thing about sophomores? Nothing. Nothing. So I feel your pain. So after that, things fell into place.
Absolutely.
And I'm not blowing smoke. John Roach was always held up here as
he's
he
number one.
should be.
And I don't see anybody
Incredible.
eclipsing him anytime soon.
You are the closest thing to John Roach. And while I was a mathematical idiot, so I didn't come close to Mr. Roach, I knew John very well.
Right.
And the one thing in common that you and John have, besides the knowledge and all that, is preparation, and organization.
Right.
Talk about John Roach.
To this day, John Roach was easily the best teacher I ever had, anything. Now one would say, well, that's because you're a math guy. Well, you can say that. I'm going to make a quick tangent and I'll come back to it. My brother was also very much a math guy. And yet my brother will say that the best teacher he ever had, hands down, was the man sitting right next to me. He claims it. He'll tell everybody, yeah, I was in all these AP classes. Best teacher I ever had was John Lynskey. So it doesn't have to be something that's subject related.
Agreed.
It's just somebody that you click with. John, there was something about him that you learned. It was like osmosis. You can be failing and you feel like you're learning in his class, He was there every day. The man would have a bad back. He'd be keeled over.
Oh, man.
And in pain, and you could see the pain in his face, and yet he's teaching. Not going through the motions. He was teaching. And that it spoke to me. I said, this guy doesn't take days off for anything. I don't think he missed a day.
No days off.
The entire time that he was teaching here at Columbus.
That back was bad, man.
Right. And I went off to, when I went to college, I took a number of math courses.
Okay.
And obviously I got my degree in mathematics, so I was taking like really high level math courses. And no one would come close to explaining things, engaging us the way that John did. And you just talk to anybody who's ever had John Roach as a student, they'll look at him as a teacher as this is the greatest teacher I've ever had. He was just that good.
Talk about spanning the legacies. You know who was talking about John Roach today? Carter Burrs.
Absolutely.
John Roach taught Carter.
Oh, yeah, I did not know that.
Think about that. There's a legacy.
There is.
That man and the effect he had on you, the fact that you are here doing what he did, it's the circle of life here at Columbus High School. It's what we do. Once I got to ask you, I was a history teacher. And I'll be honest, if you can't make history interesting, you need to go do something else.
Right.
Go work at a pet shop or something. How, and I never understood it because I didn't have the experience, how do you make math interesting?
I have no idea. I just do
Well,
my
you're
best.
doing something
I'm doing
right,
something
bro.
right, but I'm not quite sure I just make it seem like it's important to me. I like it. I love
Okay.
it. And therefore, I have an enthusiasm up there when I'm up there. And I'll tell the kids, I'll be doing a problem. I go, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm loving this. And they'll look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, just yesterday, a student was asking me, when you go home, is this what you do? And of course, I had to say, absolutely. This is what I do 24/7. I go home and I write problems to see if I can solve them. What else is there in life? This is it, So, but it's the enthusiasm.
That's the perfect answer. Now that I stop and take a step back and think about it, of course it's enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is more enthusiastic than you and genuine. It's not a put on. You really you think this stuff is great. So does Charlie Frazier.
I was going to say Charlie Frazier.
So does Webb.
Absolutely.
And Webb teaches the not yet smart, and he gets those guys ready to go.
They learn.
Maria Foyo, there's a passion there. Thank you. Great answer.
And we have that, I have to say, we have that across our department.
Yes.
We have a department that's just passionate about math in general.
About Carlos Moro. Good God Almighty.
Yeah. I mean, he gets so passionate, he has heart attacks,
I don't know how Marist was Wentz.
No, but hey, but I'm saying that he loves it that much.
Agreed.
And you know what? And I'll say something about Carlos.
Yes.
He had a heart attack. He could have taken a long time off and said, I need to recover. We got back from Christmas break. He was back on day one when they were saying you shouldn't be here. Carlos is that passionate. And I will stand by that.
Absolutely.
Talk about this is who we have here.
Yeah.
We've had a number of teachers who came back from heart attacks. Scholar's had a couple of heart attacks, and it was back here before. They're telling me, don't go back. And he's like, what am I going to do? You come back and you teach. That's what's special about this place. You want to be here. You want to be here. Look at you. You could be in Macon every single day, and you're coming back here on a regular basis, and you're still such an important part of who we are. That's Columbus.
You can't, this place gets in your DNA, and that's it.
Yeah.
You want to be here, no question. Okay, so math is math, okay? And it's a very analytical, it's cut and dry. Spirituality is a whole different thing. Faith, there's nothing concrete about faith. You can't prove really any of it. It's not a mathematical equation. So talk about your spirituality, and you are someone who takes it very seriously.
I do.
Your involvement with the Marist brothers, with everything that happens here on this campus, you took what I've noticed is you took your experiences that you learned from Brother Brady and when you were a student to an adult. So, and one thing I specifically want to ask you about, second part of this question, is the importance of the Rosary in your life. Okay?
All right. Well, as far as my spirituality, when people say that math and religion is so separate, I mean, if you start looking, a lot of scientists start bringing the two together. Einstein very much found the link.
I find that fascinating.
To me, and I'll tell it to the students, like, what does that have to do with anything? I go, we talk about the infinite. God always was, always will be. I go, the number line, you can't find the end. You can't find the beginning. And yet we can follow it forever, And if you can describe a number line as something being infinite, then why can't something else be infinite? Life. Why can't life be? Why does life have to have had a beginning? And God, we believe, is ever existing. So I believe that in math we see glimpses of God. And there's a logic and a sequence to things. The way that you just look at the solar system, just something we think of it as huge, but so small within such a big picture.
The scope of the universe.
And everything yet fits so perfectly together. The way the planets rotate around the sun. How every single time around takes the same exact amount of time. There's planning involved in this. And there's a logic and there's a sequence that's involved that somebody had to, or some greater being had to put together. And that, I think, we see God in how things fit so perfectly. You take an equation, and the way you solve an equation, there's certain steps that need to take, and some are easier than others. But no matter how difficult it is, you follow that sequence and you'll get to somewhere. And I think that we see that in our own lives. We don't see how things are going to happen, but if we start looking and putting things in place, next thing you know, you see that there's a hand in putting this piece together, in writing this equation, and it's our job to solve that equation. And I really do believe that God laid that out for us. And some of us figure it out and solve that equation, and some don't and give up. And that's life. So to me, it's always trying to find out what is that equation that God gave me to solve. And mine's different than yours. And yet there's something, you have a life that you've lived and you've been very influential to a lot of people, but you've had to figure it out. Yeah. And you've had difficult times along the way as I have. And yet, what are those? Those are just little obstacles to figure out. I got to stop and figure this out and rearrange things so that eventually I can come up with a solution to what I have before me. Now we have that choice. Do we want to solve this or not? And sometimes it takes a lot of patience, and it takes the time and the energy and the desire to come up with these solutions. But I really believe that someone put it there for me, and I got to follow that. And so in my different ways, through different facets of my life, I find something to do. And then when that comes to an end, I ask myself, well, where does he want me to go next? And I stop and I let life guide me. And I really and truly believe that if I let him guide me, he takes me to the right place. So,
that's a great answer. Thank you for that.
No problem.
The Rosary. Mm-hmm. Your classmates,
yes,
88, you guys are extraordinarily close.
We are.
It's a wonderful thing to see. Most classes are close. You guys are one of those extraordinary classes.
We are.
When your classmate, former football player, great guy, Glenn Barquette, passed away, I came to understand, A, how close you guys were, mm-hmm. and B, your absolute conviction about the Rosary. Talk about that, the
right.
Rosary.
So for years, I've always been one that from time to time I'll do the Rosary. I'll be honest with you, it's not that something that has been a daily part of my life. It always hasn't been.
Okay.
There's been times in my life where I've gotten into it more, and then other times where I've kind of let it go. At that particular moment, we were going through COVID. It was like the very beginning.
Yeah.
So the 14th of March comes around, 2020. We're stuck at home.
Yeah, we're done.
And so one of my classmates, Alfred Caballero, he gives me a call. He's like, hey, let's go for a run. Let's start running. And we started every single day. We would go out and run. This was our escape from being locked up inside our house. So we would run every day. And within that running, we would be talking about what's going on, and we had been in communication with a number of our classmates, but we get a call from another one of our classmates, Ernie Casal.
Yeah.
And Ernie's like, I want to put together a group chat during this time of everything that's going on. Another one, our school, I guess you could say, Ralph Roca, what is it? He's the president of the student council.
The alumni board.
The alumni board, that's what it is. It's the president of the alumni board. Ralph Roca, he finds out the information about Glenn. So all of a sudden, we have this going on, the group chat starting. Ralph gets this information out. We're getting the group chat together. Let's get this information out to everybody. And Alfred and I are out on a run. We look at our phones and we see this is going on. And in conversation, Alfred goes, hey, we should do something. We should do something more than just, hey guys, let's pray for Glenn. So I'm not going to take credit for it because it wasn't me. Alfred came up with the idea of doing the Rosary. And we said, you know what? We could do this. Yeah. Let's do it once. So we did it once. We did it on Zoom. And we're like, let's do this again. When we did it the second time, the first day there was 14 of us from our class.
Yeah.
The second day there was like 50 of us. And all of a sudden we're like, hey, let's get everybody involved. Yeah. And then we started reaching out to more people. And it was at that point that we're like, this is getting bigger than us. This is not just about Glenn even. This is something, we're bringing people together in a time where so many people were stuck at home and had no one to reach. And there was very little communication. Now we're getting together on a daily basis. We're all hanging out. We'd stay after the Rosary and we'd talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours every day. but we're bringing together everybody to do something special. Glenn's wife, we talked to her about it, and she came in, and to her, this became something crucial to her. I need to be there. I need to be a part of this. I need this for myself as much as for Glenn. And when we started seeing how this was affecting her and how this was helping her family and us, helping us during this time, this brought sanity to us in a time that everybody felt insane and locked up. It just became something that we needed this. And we saw that, a month and a half went by and Glenn passed away. And many could have said, oh, well, this was for nothing. And yet when that happened, we reached out to Somali, Glenn's wife, and she's like, can we keep doing this? I need this right now. And so we kept doing it with her. And the one thing that she did tell us is she's like, this helped me. I'm not questioning why did this happen now. I'm like, God, thank you for being with me through this walk. And it got her through it. It got her kids through it. And not to say they didn't have difficult times, obviously, but it helped them. And in that helping her, it helped the rest of us to the point where we were doing the Rosary every single night it was 1,000 days that it was every single night. And we had people coming in. We had as many as 350 people coming into the Rosary at one point.
Phenomenal.
Now we're still doing it. The Rosary still goes on every Monday and Wednesday. Once the whole COVID thing ended, it was very difficult for us to do this on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And sometimes we go in and it'd be me and one other person. But we thought it was important and people did want to keep coming in. So every Monday and Wednesday, we have a rotating group, classmates of ours. There's 8 of us that do it. And we still have the Rosary available for anybody who at any moment wants to come in and pray with us. And it keeps us going.
It's fantastic, Wency. You talked about running with Alfred. A lot of people don't know. You're a very accomplished runner, and you still think you have one marathon left.
I have one marathon left.
Do you really? What do you enjoy about running, Wency?
I don't.
That's perfect.
There you
So
go.
by all means, do it.
I do not enjoy running, and yet I run. So I started running on a dare. A friend of mine, I had just gone through a time that I lost like 30 pounds. I did P90X, and I was the best shape of my life. And this one guy who was like a friend of mine, he wanted to do something to get in shape, and he figured that training for a marathon would be it. So he called me up and said, hey, you want to do a marathon? I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. And he was like, let's do a half. You want to do the Disney half marathon? And I'm like, I'm not sure. He's like, I'll pay for it. And I go, all right, if you're going to pay for it, I could just start and then walk off if I don't want to do it anymore. I didn't lose anything. So I go, you know what? Yeah, I'm pretty good shape right now. Why not? So I started running. And more than anything, it was like, I'm going to do this because I've set my mind to it. And I started training in October. You shouldn't start training 2 months before a marathon.
No,
you need
generally,
4 months.
it's not a good idea.
So I started training. I started talking to OB a lot. OB was in the process of training for a marathon, and he was giving me pointers and stuff. And I go, you know what? Let me do this. So I did my first marathon, and I'll be honest with you. The training, I hated it, but it kept me doing something active. Because when you finish P90X, it's an exhausting program, and an hour and a half every single day is just, you can't keep up with that. It's not something I was going to be able to keep up with. So running kept me active. So I would go out, and for the first half mile, I would curse everybody I knew, and I'd have my conversation with God. I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but I'm going to do this anyway. After half a mile, you steady into it, and you'll be fine. So I did my first marathon, and afterwards I'm like, never again. But it's like childbirth when a woman goes through childbirth, I'll never again until all of a sudden they look at the child and how much they love it, and they're like, I want another one.
Yeah.
I wanted to do another one. So the next year I stepped it up. I didn't just do a marathon. I did a half marathon one day and a full the very next day.
That's
insane.
insane.
It is. And
That's
looking back,
insane.
I don't know why I did that. So I just kept doing them, and I ran 4 more over the course of the next few years. I ran Chicago. More than anything, it was like, I want to do this because I can, so therefore I will. I won't necessarily enjoy it, but I will. And so I therefore did Chicago, and it was a great experience. I stopped running for a long time after that. Life happened, a number of different things in my life, crept in that I got away from it. I had other responsibilities
Yeah.
and other distractions, let's say, in my life.
Okay.
So I got away from it for a while. And then one day I just decided, I got one more in me at the time. So I wound up doing this thing called the Dopey, which the Dopey, again, Disney World, I did a 5K on a Thursday, a 10K on a Friday, a half marathon on a Saturday, and then I did a full marathon on Sunday. And yes,
That's the perfect name for it.
I do need my head checked. I'm
Yeah.
convinced of that. But I got it done. I did it,
Wow.
you know? And after that, I stopped running for a while, but I need to get back into every time I stop, I start gaining weight and I start feeling less energetic.
Okay.
And it brings energy to me. I hate it at the moment, but I feel more energetic when I'm running. So,
That's impressive, bro.
yeah, one
It's
more.
impressive. You're a madman, but it's impressive.
Yeah,
Another one of your classmates, Alex Mirabal.
absolutely.
Very important man in your life.
Yes. Yes. Alex and I have known each other since we were 5 years old. We went from kindergarten through high school together. So we grew up together. You know, I love his parents like I love
Yeah.
my own. George and Sally were always wonderful with me, to the point where they'd be like, you're like the seventh child. I'm not sure I'm to that point, but, you
Quite
know,
a compliment.
they have they're a wonderful family, an incredible family. And Alex in my life has always been, huge. And when I went through my divorce years ago, Alex stepped up in a way that to this day, he's still a big part of what happened afterwards. I need to find a new place to live. And Alex, and it was one of those things, everything just falls perfectly
Yeah.
in a way. My son and his son were in St. Timothy in kindergarten at the time. And they were in the same kindergarten class, just like Alex and I were in the same kindergarten class. And we had a Father's Day event because Father's Day was in the summer, so they did it during the school year. It was right after my separation. It was right after Alex had been let go in FIU. And they had just offered him the job in Marshall.
Yeah.
So we go to this event, and it just so happens they sit us at the same table, just he and I, and my son Andres and Nico. So we're just talking, and the conversation came up, hey, Al, I don't know if you know that this just happened. He goes, yeah, I heard. He goes, well, I don't know if you just found out. I just got hired. I go, yeah, I found out. He was like, I need a place to live. And he goes, I need someone to rent my house to.
Boom.
Boom. 11 years later, I'm still living in that house, to the point where when he was moving back, when he got the job here in UM, the first thing I did is I didn't call Alex. I called Berta. I called Berta. I go, listen, Berta, I know you guys are moving back. You let me know. I understand completely if you guys need the house back. And they're like, Wency, no, we never do that to you. And I'm like, you wouldn't be doing this to me. This is your house.
There's that.
There's your house. They're like, no, Wency, we love you. And there's really that. There is a true, deep love. It's not, hey, he's my buddy, he's my boy. He's my brother.
Yeah.
And he's been my brother since we were 5 years old. And to put things in perspective, we went through elementary, we went through high school. I went 2 years to UM while he was in FIU. I transferred to FIU, so we're in FIU together. We got hired here together to start working as substitutes the same year. He had been coaching here, but we started working 1992 together here. So then we started teaching here together. So this whole thing, this has been a journey for Alex and I. And it's not something that we talk to each other on a daily basis. Alex has his life, I have my life, but when we get together, it's like time has never passed. This is 100 truly % my brother. And not just Columbus brothers, this is blood brothers.
Yeah.
And no one can take that away from us. And his brothers, when I see his brothers, I'm their brother as well. They're my brothers.
It's a wonderful thing.
It
And
is.
We're very happy for them. Speaking of family, you're an alumni dad.
Yes.
What was that like?
It's
that
different. Well, it's more than that. I mean, I've taught all three of my boys.
Yeah.
It's not just that I was a dad.
Yeah, no,
I've had them in class because it just so happens that the class I'm teaching, I'm the only one that's teaching it, and that's where they're
By
placed.
default, yeah.
So it's interesting. I love the dynamic that they're here. At the same time, you have that whole thing, like people looking, you're like, well, how do you treat your kid? And do they get special treatment? And I always try to make sure that everybody understands my kids are not getting special treatment. In fact, they probably have it tougher from me
Exactly.
than everybody else. And other kids know. They'll look at me like, why aren't you doing better in your dad's class? I was like, well, 'cause I'm there to help. I always tell my kids, if you need help, your tutor's at home, you know? But they've always been very stubborn about, yeah, I get enough of you in the classroom.
You know, it was a different standard. It was called a higher standard.
It's a higher
Yes.
standard.
You know, Wentz, we could keep going forever,
Yeah.
but, you know, time is what it is.
It is.
Time is not infinite in this situation.
Right.
So I'm going to leave you with this question, okay? The importance of lay people in the Marist organization. You know,
Right.
you have stepped up hugely because there is a need. You know, lay people have taken on a very prominent role, and you've seen it from both sides. So if I was to ask you, after all your experiences and everything else, what does being Marist mean to Wency Ortega? What would you say to me?
So when I think Marist, obviously we look to Mary. Mary is where we have to look to as an example. Obviously everything is, we say to Jesus through Mary.
Mary.
You know, we could be Dominican, we could be Claretian, we could be anything else. Or Marist. We look to Mary. It's right there in the name. So to me, when I say I'm Marist, it's I'm willing to say yes to the difficult challenges. Mary had the most difficult challenge of anybody. Maybe, you know, amongst everybody in history, you know, especially because of the time, being pregnant, out of wedlock, in a time
Yeah.
where you get stoned for that,
Exactly.
you know. And she said yes. And on top of that, oh, and by the way, you need to be the mother of God. You know, this is a huge,
Yeah. That's a
huge
big one.
burden. If she can say yes, we need to say, I feel like I need to be able to say yes to the difficult things. It doesn't mean to say yes to everything, because there's things in life that we need to say no to. But the difficult challenges in life, when they come, we need to be able to say yes and take that first foot forward. And being an educator, as we both are, that means that in the classroom, sometimes it's stepping up for that kid that you just might not like, but you've been asked to love. And we have to love them.
And love them equally.
And love them equally. So to me, it's stepping up and saying, you know, I have a job to do. I need to make sure that each one of these kids is educated. It's not an easy thing. When you have 150 students,
Yeah.
it's tough to reach each one, but you need to do your best to do that. You know, and then take that out to the real world too. I have to take that home. I have to be Marist at home and with my family, with my brothers. And with my class of 88 brothers, if you guys are watching this, Marist is right there. That's why we have that bond. Other schools look at us and they're like, that doesn't exist. You have a group chat of 175 guys,
Yeah.
and you actually talk to these guys? Yeah. And when you get together with these guys, yeah, we do. And that's part of the Marist thing. We're a family. We're brothers. Mary's our mother. And we all do this together. You know, so that's being Marist to me.
Well, on behalf of everyone at Columbus, I'm very, very glad you took that walk of faith across
am
the
too.
parking lot, because you have made a huge difference at this school, and I'm not just talking about in the
I
classroom.
appreciate that.
So thank you very much, my brother. This has been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Explore Nation, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Lucky 13 indeed. Wentz, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It was great. And so until next time, Explore Nation, we got some great guests coming up. Appreciate your support. Buenos tiempos and adelante.